Hey guys, welcome back for part 3 of the overhauled 4020 that's getting an in-frame overhaul. In the last video, we left off right where we were ready to put the head on. So today, we're going to cover everything from putting the head on to splitting the tractor, replacing the rear main seal, bolting the tractor back together, and bringing it right around to where it's running again. So grab a coffee, kick up your feet, and let's get to it. Okay, we got the head back for the 4020, so let's dig into this thing and see what this looks like here. Guess that's the old valve springs there. Don't need those anymore. I'll cut these straps with my side cutters here. Just another DeWalt tool that's way better than Milwaukee. Check the torque test channel. You'll see. According to my invoice, it was hot tanked and clean, disassembled. They pressure tested it, surfaced it, valves were done, valve job, all new springs, all new keepers, all new guides and seals, not guides, just seals. So, should be good. It was really dirty in the packaging for some reason. Not quite sure what's up with that. We'll have to clean this up a little bit nicer. There's a bunch of funny marks on here, so I just used a Scotch-Brite and got rid of that all, but that's better. Alright, so I just pulled all of the bolts out of there and wiped this all down with acetone. I just do that to keep the oil off of there, make it perfectly clean as I can so that the head gasket is going to seat real nice. Over here I got my head gasket laid out, ready to go on, and did the same thing on the bottom of the head. I just wiped it all down with acetone just to get all the oily stuff off so that head gasket has the best chance possible to stick to it. So it's a very common 4020 thing to have an oil leaking down this side of the motor. It sneaks through there, and it's because it comes out of that oil lube hole, it just doesn't seal quite nice with the head gasket over time. And I got to clean this up a little bit better here yet, so I make sure I don't have any of that stuff getting inside that hole. But I just put a bit of right stuff on there, and I actually went right to the end. I don't know if that was necessary or not, but it's usually a good idea to add a little bit of sealant on these head gaskets just because of that problem right there. There we go, that'll be better. We want to make really sure that we don't get that into the oil gallery, otherwise may wind up with oiling issues in the top end. But looks like I put more on here than what I actually did on the camera. It just looks like a lot, but you really want just a very, 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 very thin layer. There, I got a little bit on the head gasket here on the top side. That'll seal up against the bottom of the head there. And I just use right stuff because, well, it says it right on it. It's the right stuff. Okay, we'll get this head gasket on there. Okay, we're ready to put the head on. Just drive it straight in, and I'm going to try and weave this thing in there. I can go ahead and drop all the head bolts in and torque them up. Snugged them all up with the old DeWalt Zippy-Doo. Now I gotta torque them. Okay, so they want 115 foot-pounds on these, so I'm gonna do 120. Because I'm a rebel. I only have them torqued to about 18 foot-pounds with the Zippy-Doo there, so they're not very tight at all. So I'm gonna start off at, we'll go 40 foot-pounds is where we'll start. We'll torque them all of that and then we'll go up from there. Okay, now let's go the right direction. We're going to do this in the typical RCDiesel fashion where we start low and bring them up from there. Well, there goes that again. One, two, three. This one is next. 4. Yeah, that was our 40. Now I'm going to go 60. Okay, I had to kind of reposition there a little bit. That was 60 foot-pounds. Now we're going to go to 80. Okay, that was 80. Now we go to 100. Okay, now we do a final torque. We'll go 120. There, that is torqued to 120 foot-pounds. It's the end of the day here. I'm going to let it sit overnight. I'll come back in the morning and I'll retorque it. I try to get them to sit for a night and then retorque, and you'll probably see why. That window is in the east, which means today is tomorrow again. This is sat overnight. I'm going to give it a torque. Let's see what happens. Okay, I marked my socket with a line so you can see if it moves or not. Get my wrench turned on here. So 120 foot-pounds after sitting overnight. See what we got. Wow, that was a lot of movement. That's why I like to let these gaskets sit overnight, because these bolts will all turn, I don't know, 1/8 of a turn or however much that was. So it settles quite a bit just sitting overnight. I had to clean out all my lifter bores and stuff down there. It's pretty dry now. So I'm just going to pour a bit of oil down there. And my flashlight died. Oh! Useless. Well, that light died, so I'm back to my old trusty DeWalt. Man, it's like the only company that makes anything that stays working. Can I get any in there even? Oh yeah. Oh, that's pretty easy then. These hoses are really in the way. And there I go, spilling all over the place. You can see me drop them down and then I kind of lift them a little bit again after. What I'm doing is I'm just seeing if it has suction. If it has suction, then that means it's down in the cup of the lifter, and that's what I want. I don't have to look down there at every single one of these. I can just drop it down, and if I pull on it, yeah, there's a bit of suction there, then I know we're in the lifter and we're good. That only happens if you have oil in your lifter though. Before I drop them down here, I've got a little oil cap here with some oil in it. And I'm just dipping them in the oil and running them around so that the top and the bottom have oil on them. And that way they're lubed up a bit. Okay, so those push rods are all in. Now I need to oil up the rocker shaft, and then I can drop him into place here. Okay, I'm just going to get this shaft oiled up here. Boy, if you're in the market for a good sort of utility light, that DeWalt DCL 182 is a fantastic light. And everybody likes different things and has different preferences. I've tried a lot of different flashlights over the years, and I've only had a couple that I really liked. But this thing is really awesome. I really, really like that light. Charges with USB. It's really tough. Really tough. So we get some oil on these guys here. Make sure our valves don't have to run dry on top there. Alright. Let's get this thing on there. Okay, I forgot to put the spacers in between here, so pretty well impossible to line this up if you don't do that. You can tell somebody's been in here before because these all have black washers except for that one has a steel washer and it's kind of jammed on there. Somebody lost one at some point. Okay, now I got a little pin in there that I gotta line up. See where we're at here. Well, it's hard to tell, but it looks like it is lined up. Well, I'm not quite sure. It looks like that pin is lined up, but I can't get it to drop down onto there. We'll try and turn that shaft a bit. That's going to be it there. These rockers all set down into the push rods, so I know that they're engaged. They won't be interfering when I tighten. What is going on here? I do not understand what's going on. Well, how hard is it to put a rocker shaft on? The shaft doesn't turn, which that means the pin is engaged, so why can't I pull this down? There it goes. Well, I don't know. I never did see what was catching on me. It's going down nice now. So now that that's all back in place, I can put some lubrication on these bolts because I forgot to. It's very efficient to do it this way. Huh. Okay, that was a very efficient waste of time. I'll get myself cleaned up here and then I'm going to torque those. 55 foot-pounds. No, that was only 41. There it is. Okay. So with that all on here now, it's really interesting how much play we have. Look at that, eh? It's supposed to be 16 thou. I never adjusted these. I think they put new seats in there and that brings the valves down in the head, which gives more clearance here. So it's no problem. We'll get that all set up with the adjustment, but it's just interesting. You know, I've heard of guys doing stuff like this and not setting valves after. I don't even know if this one would run if I didn't set the valves. Oh, the book says just make it 18 thou. Get in there. Doesn't matter if it's hot, doesn't matter if it's cold, doesn't matter if it's intake valve, exhaust valve, just make it 18 thou. Okay. 18 thou it is. Woo, that's nice. That's perfect. Nice. Okay, gotta do a little switcheroo back and forth there because I don't fit on both these sides, these SCVs in the way. Now I've got to roll it over to top dead center on number 6. So just hang tight. Well, I just kind of been cruising along on this thing. So put the rocker cover on, coolant manifolds, took the top manifold off to take the thermostats out of here and here, broke a bolt off, had to drill that out and get it out of there. Thermostats I'm going to replace, but you can tell by the way the old ones look how bad this thing needs a coolant flush. So I left the thermostats out so I can flush it later. The water pump in, upper and lower rad hoses are back on. That's that part. And then over here on this side, I put all the injectors back in, put the high pressure lines on, the return line, Put the alternator brackets back on, the belt, tighten that all up, and this is getting very close here to being done the top end. I just have to put the intake and exhaust manifolds on this side yet, and then the top is done. Still waiting on oil pump gears, waiting for those to show up. You can see how rough these are, all the fractures in there, so we have to replace that. We want to have good oil pressure. There we have it. I got the exhaust manifold on, intake manifold, all this stuff. That stuff is done. I got all my coolant stuff hooked up. Water manifold on there, thermostats out of it, and now I just took all the wiring off the starter, getting ready to split this thing. The rear main seal is leaking, and or the transmission input seal, so I got to get this guy split apart, and just getting up to the point where I'm ready to put my splitting stands underneath. Problem with that is I borrowed these out to a farmer friend of mine to split a New Holland tractor on tracks, and that tractor smashed the wheels off of this thing. Apparently, these cannot handle the weight that tractor was, and now I got to fix this up. So, just been working on making some brackets, modifying brackets to go on there. So I got to finish this stuff, get them bolted on here, clean my floor up a little bit, and throw my stands underneath. I got to drain transmission oil, take a bunch of lines and stuff off of here so I can split this guy apart, and then oh, I don't even have any lines actually right here to do. No, that's a 40-20. I don't need to do that. I have one line on the other side I have to take off. Oh, it's these ones here, right? I got to take these guys all off up here, take these brackets all off and stuff, and kind of swing these out of the way so that I can split it there and then roll the front of the tractor ahead. Good. Let's get going on this project then. Well, I was hoping I was going to get this tractor split today, and I did. And boy, have I got a mess to clean up in here. I knew that the rear main seal was leaking. When I took the pan off, I could see inside the bell housing. But this thing is just packed right up. Just packed, completely packed. So I gotta get this clutch off of here. Oh, what a mess. Oh boy. Just working away at cleaning this up a little bit so I can get the flywheel off, and like some mouse has been in here and packed this thing right full of, I don't know, all kinds of stuff. Alright, now I got a big cleaning project again. Look how rusty that is. This isn't actually a traction clutch, it's just an engine disconnect clutch, because this is a Powershift tractor, so they have kind of like a torque limiter set up in here. But that thing is, it was rusted together. So I got a bunch of cleaning up to do there. I got that housing that's got to get cleaned out. And once I get all this gook off of here, there's a rear main seal in there somewhere. Boy, did I make a mess here. Woo! But I got this fairly nice and clean now. That's looking a lot better. And then on this side, oh! Ah! Yeah, told you I was going to find a rear main seal in there. Got that plate off, and the seal is cracked in a whole bunch of places, so that's why it was leaking. So I just got to get new seal, new gasket for here, and then I can slap this end of it back together and put that thing back together too. I was just noticing on the clutch plate and pressure plate here, we got some interesting stuff going on there. Obviously this is all kind of verbrucht, wore out. We got some broken springs in some of these, but this tractor really is just a yard tractor. It doesn't really do any work anymore. Just a handy little loader tractor to have around the farm, so we're probably just going to leave this alone. It's going to work fine the way it is, and if it does ever someday completely fail, it's really not that much work to split these tractors. They're pretty simple, so it wouldn't be a big deal to change it later. But I think this will go for probably 10 more years the way this tractor gets used. Well, how about that, eh? Rear main seal's installed, it's all torqued up. Next up, flywheel. Yeah, just like that. Now I got to do the pressure plate and the clutch disc. Boom! Pressure plate's on. Hardware is torqued and locked in place with the locking tabs. So I'm going to take my lineup bar out of there. And splines are anti-seized. Ready to marry this thing back together. There we go. She is married back together. Just got to get that line on and put this stuff here all back together. I got a sensor to put back in there. I got to put this pipe back on. These O-rings were leaking, so while I had the transmission oil drained out, I took that pipe off and I'll fix that stuff all up good too. Also, this drain line from the pump was routed really dumb, so I'm going to fix that and route it properly as well. So, yeah, I'm going to get on that part now. There, that's all back together, except for this one hose I got to replace here, little elbow. Going onto that line, but anyways, got that black one routed a little bit more nicer, got that stuff all back together. Put the sump screen back in there, in that plug, it was nice and clean, so that was good. Filled it back up with oil. This wiring here was just a big mess. They added a start relay, just a quick and dirty job. So I cleaned up all that wiring and made it a little bit nicer. It was just such a mess before. So got that done. And now I am back to where I started before I split it to change the rear main seal. So that means I'm back to this oil pump. So that's what those gears look like. You can see all the fretting. It's just, it's very damaged. A lot of wear in there. And then if we compare that to a new gear, nice, clean, smooth surfaces. So we're going to put the new gears in there and hopefully this will help it have a little bit better oil pressure too. But now I got to figure out how to get this thing apart. I've never taken one of these apart before, so there's a couple different versions of this pump. A couple different ways they put them together. So it looks like this one, I already took the guide pin out. So I got to pull this gear off and then that shaft should slide out the bottom, is what I'm understanding from the way it is set up here. And then I should be able to press this one off the shaft and then press the new one on the shaft. I don't know, it has a lube, or it has a hole there, so maybe there's a pin that holds that on too. I don't know. I gotta figure that out yet, but first I gotta get that shaft out of there. There, I pressed the shaft out of there, press the hub off, and then the shaft just kind of comes out the bottom, whoop, like so. Now I have to press this gear off, but there's no shoulder on there, so I marked it with a black marker along there so that I can press this back together and hopefully get it very close. The pump, so this is the thrust surface for the gear. Not much wear there. That looks very nice. And also on the inside here, same thing. Not much wear. So I think the casing looks pretty good. The shaft has a tiny bit of wear here, but not much at all. So that's going to go back in there. Just got to press the that gear on, and the one that had the hole in it. Oh, where is it? This one doesn't have one. Oh, okay. That's weird. The new one doesn't have that hole, but that hole is because this is the idler gear, and that's for lubrication, probably, on there. But I guess the new one doesn't have that. It's an upgrade. Less lubrication. Upgraded. It's getting there. Got this all pressed back together. The drive hub back on. Drive gear and the driven gear down here. Got that all, seems to be about the right amount of play here. Just a little smidgen. And now I need to just lube this up a little bit, put a little bit of oil in there, and then I'm going to pack it full of grease just to help the engine start the first time. That grease really helps seal these gears up and it pulls the oil in real quick. So you don't have any time hardly at all without oil pressure. So I'm going to do that. Throw that bottom cover back on. And then at that point I guess I'll need to line my pump timing marks up if they're not already. Yeah, they're not right now. So I have to line those pump timing marks up. Roll this over to top dead center on number 1 compression. And then I can put that oil pump in and see if I get it timed right the first time or not. There we go. I got this all together here, so you can see the gear. Oh, hang on. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Let's try that. You can see the gear inside there turning. There you go. I decided not to grease this one. I just oiled it. This gear is, this oil pump is right down in the oil, so not really necessary, I guess, on this guy. I do usually grease them though. I remember my dad complaining about these 4020s and their oil pumps. My dad was a mechanic too, and I remember him complaining about 4020s. He wasn't a John Deere guy. Neither am I really, but anyway. He always said, who wants to retime an engine just to change an oil pump? It's just the way they did it on the 4020, but it is kind of annoying. The cam runs the oil pump gear, and then the oil pump gear on the other side runs your injection pump. So the crank is timed to the camshaft, and then the oil pump is timed to the camshaft, and then the injection pump is timed to the oil pump. Just seems kind of funny. Just a very strange way of doing it. Another thing I remember him saying is, how dumb is that? You have to take the oil pump out to change rod bearings or main bearings? Yeah, that's the way it is on a 4020. That oil pump comes out of that hole and it covers this entire area. You can't get these two main caps off, and you can't get that rod bearing for sure out of there. At least not easily, if that oil pump is in here. So that is kind of dumb. It does seem kind of lousy, but that's just the way they did it. So if you have a look up inside that hole there, that gear right there, that's your drive gear off the cam. That drives your oil pump. And then on the other side, this is your injection pump drive shaft right here. And on the other side, there's a gear right there, and that gear is for the tack. So this gear drives the oil pump gear, and then the oil pump drives that drive shaft, which is your pump shaft. So it's got a spline in there now. Yeah, Dad was right. This is kind of dumb. I can't get that thing up there because it's really tough to align all three contact points at the same time. And so I found that you got to take this timing cover off, then you can see your gear and stuff. So now you can see that's the oil pump gear, and where the oil pump shaft is supposed to spline in, and it's almost like it's just, I can't get the camera in there enough to see, but it's just catching a little bit, but I just cannot get that thing to pop into place. So timing mark is very close to lined up. I've moved it a bit, but I mean, I can adjust that with the pump after, but it's still, I don't know, this is kind of weird. There, oil pump's in, it's all bolted up, all timed. I was a tooth off, so it was handy having some space here to be able to move this around. And of course, as that gear goes in, because it's a helical cut gear, it actually turns as it goes up. So you have to have your timing mark on your pump set way over here, so that when it engages the shaft and spins its way in, it winds up being lined up once it's in there. And I'm almost lined up, very close. So I think I'm still on here. Yeah, so I might have to adjust the timing a little bit, but at least that's in there. And now I need gaskets for the tack drive cover. What a pain. Well, what that means? Oh, I guess I gotta clean up that oil pan now and put it on. This messy pig. Yuck. That's my favorite job. No, it's not. Huh. Well, it took me half the morning, but the oil pan's back on there now. Bolts are all torqued up, and I put a new oil filter in it. New gaskets and everything on there, so I need to fill it up with oil now, but the drain plug, the washer for that, is completely toast. Yeah, that guy there, it's shot, so I don't have any of these. I got all different sizes, but not this size, so I gotta get one of these coming. But in the meantime, I'm gonna throw the step on there too. Well, that's done. I got a brand new muffler for this thing. I think I'll probably do that next, maybe, hey? Yeah, that sounds good. Well, that didn't take very long, and I'm still waiting on parts. I do have to adjust this fuel tank, though. That fuel tank is leaking. Looking up underneath there. You maybe can't tell on the camera too good, but this has been attempted to be patched with epoxy or something. So I'm going to need to dry this off and find out where it's actually leaking. Let's see what we got to do there. I might have to pull this tank out and get it welded. We'll see. I found it! Knocked a bit of the epoxy off of there, and all of a sudden we got a squirter. It is also leaking right around the base of that fitting too. So yeah, tank's got to come out to fix this one. Whoa! Fuel tank is out. Gotta get this thing down to the welding shop now. It's cracked around that fitting, and it has a pinhole right there. Somebody's tried to epoxy this to seal it, but that's just, yeah, that doesn't work. It's got to get welded. Got to do it right. Oh, you know what they say, if it ain't one thing, it's 100. I took the fuel tank away so I can get welded up. Got a jerry can in here just so I can bleed this and get this thing running. I was hoping to break it in here right now, but I couldn't get nothing to bleed. I couldn't bleed the fuel pump, and so I worked back, and I couldn't bleed the filter. And then I got to the pump, and the pump, the primer on the pump don't work. It's just nothing. And then I took the pump off. Well, this is all busted inside here. So, I don't know how it was running before, but it ain't running now. So, I guess I have to get a fuel pump now. Lift pump. While I was cranking it though, I did have a good almost 20 psi, probably 18 psi cranking, so that's pretty good. I'll get that on video later yet, but right now I was just trying to get it to bleed, and the thing wouldn't bleed. I couldn't use the hand primer because it was broken, so I was cranking it to bleed it, and I couldn't pump any fuel cranking it, and I'm like, what's going on? So anyway, finally got that figured out now. Looking at this thing a little closer, this is a very cheapo aftermarket lift pump. Aftermarket's okay, but this is not a good one. This thing is junk. It's very poorly built. Alright, so I got the new fuel pump on there. This is just a cheapo like the other one. John Deere didn't have a proper John Deere one, so I just put another cheap one on there. That's what I could get quickly. So I've got fuel bled everywhere. Pump works really good. I got fuel up to all the injectors. I got about 18 pieces of oil pressure when I'm cranking. We'll see what that does when it's running. Just running out of a jerry can because the fuel tank is still off getting welded up. It needs to be patched in a couple places there at the bottom. It was rusting through. So now it's time to crank them over and see if I did anything right. I mean, what could possibly go wrong? In here, so I've got the fan all off right now, just running it with no coolant. Got a fuel leak here. Coming from up top. I don't know why that's leaking, so I gotta figure that out. This one's leaking a little bit too. I've had an oil leak or a fuel leak right here. I'm gonna have to change that little gasket. That guy there needs to get replaced. Working all the air out of the return lines there, out of the fuel system. Well, there we have it. I think I got all the leaks fixed up there now. I was running it with no coolant in there, didn't have the fan going, none of that stuff. The reason why I do that is because I don't have a dyno, so I can't break this engine in like you're supposed to. And so you have to use an ulterior method, which for me is to run it with no coolant. Got to keep the water pump from turning so you don't wreck the water pump. And I just run it, you know, between varying the RPM from 1200 up to full throttle, different RPMs until the block reaches operating temperature, and then I shut it down. That gets your liners really nice and hot. And we're doing that because heat seats rings. And if you can get those rings nice and toasty, it'll help them break in a lot quicker. If you can't dyno it, that's a way better way of doing it, but I can't do that, so I have to do it this way. But I've run it long enough now to get everything nice and hot, so now I got to pull the valve cover off and a bunch of stuff back apart here. I got to retorque the head, and reset the valves, and then I can put the rest of this back together, get it outside. We got to do a coolant flush. There was lots of nasty coolant in this tractor, so I got to flush the coolant. For now, I got to just run it out of the jerry can. Yeah, that's pretty much where this is at here. I got a tech tip for all you DIYers out there installing circulating heaters. One of the most common issues I run into when I'm working on just about anything is circulating heaters that are installed incorrectly. I just finished fixing this one. This style of circulating heater should always be mounted vertical, and the outlet of the heater should always be lower than the outlet of the block with your water coming in. That will help your convection, and it'll circulate much better. Alright, I got this guy filled up with water and some good soap in the coolant there. I ran it a little bit last week. Now I've just let it sit over the weekend. You remember how dirty this engine was inside and the rad and everything, so that's all got to get cleaned up better. So I've been letting it sit so that soap can work at breaking stuff up. Now this morning I'm ready to do the rad flush, but in the meantime I got the fuel tank back, and they did a nice job of putting a patch in the bottom there where we had a couple of pinholes leaking and stuff. So got that fixed up. Also, there was somebody jammed something through the tank right there at some point, and they had epoxied that all over. That one wasn't leaking, but while the tank is out, get her fixed. So that tank has been pressure tested and patched. Everything's good. So might as well put it back in there, and then I can put the air cleaner back on, and then I'm going to kick it outside and do my coolant flush outside. Alright, that's all back together now. So that's perfect. So far, I got no leaks underneath here. So that's good. I put a bunch of fuel in there. All the fuel that I drained out of it, I put back in. Now I'm going to fire this guy up, kick him outside, and we'll start the coolant flush, which is basically just got a cardboard in front of the rad so that it has to run pretty hot. And I took the thermostats out. There's no thermostats in there. So that will allow the coolant to just keep on flowing really nice and proper through that rad. And we'll see how this all goes here. Mounted the circulating heater on there properly, so that's done. I don't have to worry about that later. Coolant flush is done. I just got to drain the water out of it. We'll put it back in the shop, get these thermostats, new thermostats put back in there, and button up the rest of it. Looks like I do have a bit of an oil leak right there, so I never had this apart. This was all just very dirty, this whole side of the engine, so I didn't know it was leaking before. So I gotta take this apart yet and change that O-ring in there. I'll have to change this one up in here too. Looks like a little bit of a leak here too, but actually it's just residual stuff left over from when I had the pump off, because it never got any worse in the few hours that I've been doing the coolant flush here. So that one will be okay, but that one's gotta get fixed. Got a couple of newer style thermostats here. The old style looks like that. little bit different. New one's got a different bottom on it as well. Yeah, look at how nice and clean it is in that rad now. Just beautiful. Alright, we're here at the dyno, just getting ready to dyno this thing, see if we can blow it up. Okay, back at the shop. I gotta fix my sealing washers on those injector lines. I guess I gotta get some different ones and put them on there. That's too bad. Other than that, went really well. Engine's nicely broken in. Tried to blow it up, couldn't blow it up. Means we did a good job. Those Reliance Hyperformance pistons in there make good power. Seems to work nice. There, we got all the leaks fixed. Just got to put that shield back on and bring her home. Runs really nice, no smoke. Perfect.